this video, we will demonstrate how to access the piston assembly, the seals and spacers, and the brine valve assembly. This is a view of the front of the control valve. In order to access the internal components, we will need to view the back side of the power head. Using a crosshead screwdriver, loosen the 4 screws that are located in each corner. The front display cover will then easily tilt forward and away from the power head housing. Please keep in mind that there is limited slack for the wires connected to the front display board. Then carefully wiggle and detach the multi-pin connectors away from the front display board. The first being the white drive motor connector, followed by the red power connector, followed by the white meter cable connection, and finally the micro switch connection. And then set the display cover off to the side. There are a few bolts and screws that we will need to remove in order to access the piston, seals and spacers, and brine valve assembly. The first being the screw and washer that holds the piston rod to the main gear. Then, using a crosshead screwdriver or nut driver, remove the 2 bolts that hold the power head housing to the valve body. Next, detach the meter cable tip by pushing up from underneath and then lift the meter cable tip out of the way. Next, while simultaneously wiggling and tilting back the power head, lift it up and away from the valve body and set it aside. Next step is to loosen and remove the 3 bolts that are holding the metal plate in position, followed by the 1 screw that is positioned in front of the brine valve assembly. Then lift the metal plate up and out of the way. Then lift and pull the piston assembly straight out of the valve body. It is possible that a number of rubber seals and spacers may still be attached to the piston, as in this case. The seals and spacers will easily slide off the piston. Next, check for any scratches or damage to the piston itself, because if so, it is recommended to replace the complete piston assembly. Then look to see if there are more rubber seals and spacers located inside the valve body and remove them. Then remove the brine valve assembly by pulling it straight up and out of the valve body. The brine valve should easily open and close by pushing on the spring. Next, we recommend cleaning out both the valve body port and the brine valve port to ensure that there is no debris lodged inside of them. There should be a total of 4 spacers and 5 rubber seals. You'll want to inspect all 5 rubber seals for any possible tears or swelling due to chlorine or chloramine exposure. Inspect all 4 spacers for any possible damage as well. If you see evidence of any damage to these components, we recommend you replace the complete seal and spacer set. As a point of interest, the spacer does come apart and is easily snapped back together, as shown here. Please note the distinct differences between the upflow and downflow valve pistons. If you plan on replacing the piston assembly, it is imperative that you install the correct version into the valve body. Please ensure that an upflow valve uses an upflow piston and a downflow valve uses a downflow piston. Next, inspect the brine valve assembly for any debris or swelling of the rubber seal, which can occur because of chlorine or chloramines. The brine valve's purpose is to allow water to be drawn from and return to the brine tank. Swelling will negatively affect the brine draw and refill cycles, and the brine valve assembly should be replaced. Also, the brine valve should open and close easily when the spring is pushed, but if the valve has seized or does not move freely, it should be replaced as well. The 2 O-rings wrapped around the brine valve should be inspected for tears or damage and replaced if necessary. Now it's time to place the components into the valve body. First, simply push the brine valve assembly into its port and push the spring down several times to ensure it does not seize and bounces back up on its own. Then, when placing the seals and spacers into the valve body, note that there is a specific order that needs to be followed. It doesn't matter which way these components face, but the order certainly does matter for the control valve to function properly. First, place a rubber seal as far down as it will go into the valve body, followed by a spacer, then a rubber seal, then a spacer, and so on until the last rubber seal is placed at the top as seen here. It's also recommended to place these components into the valve body one at a time to ensure that each seal and spacer are seated in their proper position. Prior to placing the piston assembly into the valve body, it's recommended to apply a thin coating of silicone grease to the piston to allow it to move up and down smoothly. Next, push the piston assembly as far as it'll go down through the center of the seal and spacer stack. Once in position, while pushing down on the red end plug, you can push and pull the piston up and down to ensure it is moving smoothly. Then ensure the hook is at the back of the metal plate as shown here and place it in a position. Then reposition and tighten the 3 bolts and screw nice and tight to ensure that the metal plate is holding the piston and brine valve assemblies in place. Next, make note of the notched out section on the power head. You want to align and tuck it under the hook on the metal plate. Align the piston assembly through the center hole and the brine valve through the smaller sized hole while simultaneously placing the housing under that hook on the metal plate. All while ensuring that the piston rod aligns with the main gear to allow the screw and washer to be placed back into position. While holding the power head in place, tighten the 2 bolts that hold the power head housing to the valve body, and then place and tighten the screw and washer to secure the piston assembly to the main gear. Next, place the meter cable tip back into position and click it into place. Next, connect the multi-pin connectors to the display board while keeping in mind that the connectors are color-coded and keyed to fit in only one orientation. Then reposition the front cover back into place, and while holding the front cover in position, use the cross-head screwdriver to tighten the 4 screws back into place.
Visit us at www.canaturewg.com.